right, we are live. Welcome to the Paintball Passport. I have a very special guest here today, and we will get right to it. But first, I guess I wanted to give a shout out for everybody who's listened this far. Um, Not sure when this will come in the backlog, but this might be episode 10 already. And also a shout out to Infamous and Pro DNA Paintball. I should be getting a knock on the door here any minute for my brand new Infamous CS3. Also, shout out to Ryan Hall and Arc Anodizing because it's going to come back to me super decked out, beautiful colors. I'll share that soon. Uh, Arc is awesome. Ryan Hall's the man. If you guys want your guns looking sweet and custom, then Arc Anodizing. He's not bringing this episode, but I am going to give Arc Anodizing the shout for this episode. So without further ado, I got my buddy and one of my favorite OG players and favorite field owners of all time, Micah, on the show. So, dude, what's good, Micah?
Oh man, thanks for having me on. I'm excited. Love
Dude,
love reliving the travel and thinking about it again.
well, I appreciate you, finding time in your day. I know you got a family, businesses, but yeah, dude, I've had a few people on already that are kind of my generation, but I've been getting more and more interested in your generation's travel stories because I feel like when you were doing it, that was like you were pioneering it. You know what I mean? Like it was still, from what I hear, pretty lawless back then. Uh,
Yeah, I think things have changed a little bit.
yeah. So yeah, I mean, I guess a quick brief background, um, maybe the 1,000 yard stare version or from 500 feet above. Give me a breakdown of coming into pro, notable teams, and when you started traveling internationally to play pro.
Sure, yeah. So I started playing paintball in like '89. I hooked up with some of the Ironman guys at a local tournament, started playing with them at fields. I got on the Ironman in '91 when I was 16, and the next closest player was like 26. And then after that, there everyone was 35, and they all looked like big grizzled lumberjacks.
Yep.
I was a bit of a fish out of water. Played with the Ironman for a while, and then I stepped out of paintball for school. Both my parents are teachers, and they really wanted me to do school uh, full time and take it seriously. And then I came back in, got back on the Ironman, um, ended up being the co-captain with Rich for a while. Then we formed Excessive in 2004. Played with Excessive until I ended up blowing up my knee. While I was on the Ironman, I actually was like the first sort of American mercenary that would go to Europe and play European events. So I was playing with Joy Division for a season and a half. That
Sweet.
that was pretty cool. So I played every event, and different Ironman teammates would come in. Like Oliver played an event with us, Rich played an event or two, Matt played an event, Yosh played an event. But I was the constant and like kind of their field captain, and sort of took them from like a fun loving group of little athletic fast kids to like a serious paintball team. And then after I left the team, they came over here and started kicking ass. So that was pretty cool to see.
That's amazing, dude. It's funny because I'm sure most of the people in my generation know you, but the more and more I talk to, like, I mean, a lot of kids in XL now, they don't barely know, like the Oliver Lang generation or
Right.
yours or anything like that. So I don't think people realize like just how, key in like the development of the sport that we all get to chase now, where it's like, this is what it looks like. These are the perks and benefits we have. And a lot of that came from you, especially if you're saying like you were the first, one of the true pioneers of like going over there and playing abroad. Maybe the other guys
Yeah.
weren't.
Yeah, I
Um,
think once we started going over there, and Joy Division had never even gotten close to the finals. We ended up in the finals. We won an event when, and every other team was like Avalanche, us, Ground Zero, and Image. That was the finals, and we ended up winning that tournament. And I think once we were, I mean, we were kicking ass pretty much all year, but that was like when other European teams that had some money guys were like, "Oh, what's this all about? Let me see if we can, sneak a guy over here or two." And then I mean, and it blew up, right? Then it was
yeah.
all the guys coming over.
Yeah. So, and quick side note, funny that you said you joined Ironman in 91. I was 1 years old at that time, and that is mind blowing because you
Yeah.
don't look much older than me,
Oh, thank you.
and
Or I'm sorry, I don't know.
no, I think I don't know. People always say I look about 30. I'm 33, so I think you look young considering that I was, just out of the womb when you were playing pro paintball in the beginning. And
Right, yeah,
and what's even crazier about that is me and you have played together. Like we
yeah,
have, made fun lines and wrecked house against good teams
right.
at your field. And oh, dude, time is just wild in that way that I wasn't even born when you were beginning to play. And
Paintball is so awesome, isn't it?
it's
No other sports like that. You can get
you're
people that are 20 years apart and compete together and yeah,
Yep, it truly does, yeah, it brings people together of all generations where we've probably both been that guy before where, like you said, everybody on your team is 30 plus, grizzly old, man's man type guys, and you're the 14-year-old kid that's now their new snake front kid.
yeah,
And in football and everything else, that just doesn't happen. You're playing
yeah,
in your own age group. So
yeah.
super cool. But yeah, back to the point. I'm sure you have, certain events you want to talk about, but tell me a little bit about exactly how that went down the first year with Joy. Like, from what I imagine, this is like, there's no social media. There's like cell phones aren't even really popping yet. So,
Yeah,
how
so
did they reach out to you? How did it happen?
the beginning of the year, we were both sponsored by Angel, and Maggot had come over and was like at an event or just like hanging out, not playing. And he's just like, man, I need help. I want to get my team good. So he approached the Angel people, and they're like, listen, will you guys pay for flights for the Ironman? We'll fly them over here, and then they'll play with us. What do you guys think? And Angel was all on board. So then they approached the team, and they're like, hey, we want to bring someone over. Who would you recommend? And so like Shane was running the team at the time. From what I understand, he's like, you need to take Micah. Like he's your best bet. He's young. He's hungry. He's going to go get it for you. So then Maggot approached me, and I was like, heck yeah. I had just quit my job and was just going to do paintball like as much as possible. So he was like, let's do it. So I just got on the team, started playing paintball. It was real fun because the first tournament we went to Portugal, and it was like there was like one older kind of back guy, and everyone else was like 5'6", super athletic, just
Mhm.
skinny, fast as shit. And back then, paintball wasn't really like that, like it is now. Like it was more like gunfights and move up slowly. And so I was just like, you guys are fast, but you're not great at paintball. They're like, yeah, that's about right. I'm like, all right, cool. So we did like the craziest off the break plays where and it usually worked because they were just so fast. We were taking, I remember one field that was like the V Force field that had like the stand up V Force spelled out, and that was the 50-yard line. I had three guys go past the 50-yard line and just jump into bunkers and just hide. And like I think Matt played that event with us, and me and Matt were just like, no one's shooting at us. No one's, we're staying in the open, just like looking for hoppers because they're all panicking because we're all so
Mhm.
close. Just like there's a hopper, there's a hopper, there's a hopper. Like it made us look like superstars when really all those guys were taking like 8 guys panicking, 7 guys panicking, shooting at them. So it was really fun to put these super diabolical plays together. And the
Mhm.
guys are just totally in. They're just like, you want me to go their flag station off the break? I'll do it. So that was really cool.
Well, yeah. So, I mean, I know the way I travel to get brought for teams, you're not just going to like be a hired mercenary sometimes. So, aside from being like a guy who's out there doing damage on the field, were you also kind of like, fully responsible on like you're
Yeah,
taking charge and coaching? Like, hey guys, we're running the team my way this
yeah.
event since you're bringing me here.
Yeah. At first, I had the idea of like it'd be a vacation. I just go out there and enjoy the free trip and hang out and meet people. And I get there and I'm like, I can't do that. We're walking. We're
Mhm.
the first team on the field. We're the last team off the field walking it because you just walk fields at the event because we didn't know what the layout was going to be. I'm yelling at the guys for drinking beer. Like I'm coaching them during the game. I'm telling Mag like yeah, that guy messed that up. Do not have him play next game because I didn't want to sit people because I felt weird about it. But I was like,
Yep.
here's what we need. I need your fast guys, or I need that guy to get to the corner. Like, so yeah, I stayed up at night. We did team meetings. I ran the team like the Ironman ran was like, you know, do the work.
Mhm.
Everyone's there and everyone's good, but the teams that set themselves apart are the ones that are willing to work hard for it and not go to the players bar at the field and drink 10 beers and then stagger home, right? Like we're out there doing the work to win, and the guys really responded and were totally willing to do it, and I think it showed.
Yeah, 100%. That I fully know that situation because my first year or two were like that too. I'd go to these new bucket list places and I'm like, oh, as long as I play good for these guys, they're gonna love it. But like either the coach or the owner or the manager would come over and be like, all right, here's our playbook. You're running the show. And you're like, okay, I'm now gonna have to use, all of my RAM space this whole weekend to be fully clocked in. I'm gonna be scouting, I'm gonna be drawing up
Yeah,
plays at night, I'm gonna be running the meetings. And sometimes you even become the manager where you're like, do we have a cooler for the pods? And they're like, no. And you're like, all right, let's get a cooler.
yeah,
Do we have someone not playing on one of our friendly teams that can like,
right. Scout
sit and
out.
scout that we're not, the games that we're not going to make. And by the end of the weekend, you're like, you're more mentally exhausted than you are physically exhausted because you had to be the guy in every situation there.
Yeah, yeah. It was stressful too because I wanted to perform. I wanted the guys to perform. I wanted to get the most out of them. I felt like they had put a large amount of money on, just the tickets to get me out there.
True.
I wanted them to feel like they got it. They got a
Yeah.
good deal. And I also wanted the ability to travel. So that first event in Portugal, we didn't really travel. Matt and I stayed in Portugal for a day and toured around Lisbon and did that whole thing. Because I didn't really think through like, oh, I could travel. But then after that, I was like, all right, I'll do serious at the event. We'll take it hard. I'll do everything it needs to do to win, and then I'll take a week afterwards and stay in that area or go
Mhm.
somewhere close. And I want to be able to see as much as I can before I'm what I am now. Um, I've always had a really interesting approach, or not interesting, but been very interested in traveling. I've been very interested in history, and of course, European history is like what we're taught here the most. So that was always very interesting to me. The year before college, so in between high school and college, my older sister lived in London. She was kind of a big baller PR executive, and she wanted me to come visit her. So we set up this trip. I saved up all my money and we're going to go to London where she was. And then she wanted to go somewhere else's vacation. She said, where do you want to go? You're coming all this way. Why don't you pick? And I was like, man, it doesn't matter. I'm going to be everywhere. So you pick somewhere and I'm going to go everywhere else. She's like, that doesn't make any sense. How are you going to go everywhere? I'm like, I don't know either, but I'm going to figure it out. So,
Yes.
so we went to Spain afterwards and toured around and did like the regular tour stuff. And it was real cool. We went from Seville to the coast on this bus, and coming back, it was really windy roads or windy roads, and I got kind of seasick. And as soon as we stopped, like halfway to use the restroom and get snacks, I just bolted off the bus to go throw up. And when I came back, my sister was gone. She had bought snacks or whatever, and our backpack was on the chair, and I didn't really think much of it. Um, so 2 days later, we get to the airport, we're checking in, and they're like, can we see your passports? And she pulls out her passport, and then I'm like, you have my passport. She's like, no, I don't have your passport. You have your passport. I'm like, oh no. So we ripped through our bags,
Oh
and
my
like, I'm
God.
pretty sure that someone had stolen my passport on the bus, but because
Oh.
neither one of us was really keeping track. So she's like, mosquito, she's like, I'm a big baller, and she had a really big sales presentation like the next day, and she's got to be home. So it's like Sunday night in Spain at the airport, and she's like, I can't stay. I'm like, I'm 18. I have like, $30 left to my name. What do you mean she can't stay? And she's like, and she goes through her pocket and she's like, here's like 20 more dollars. Sorry. And she just goes.
Oh my God.
So I don't speak very good Spanish. I live in California, so I'm always hearing it and I'm familiar with a few words, but like not really. And I just like crushed that my sister just like left me, 18-year-old, just gone. So that was pretty mentally challenging.
Yeah.
And I find a taxi cab because I don't really know what to do. And I get in the taxi cab and I'm like, pretty upset. And I managed to tell the taxi cab driver what had happened. So he says, all right, no problem. I got you. We're going to go. And he communicates to me barely. We're going to go to the police station because you need your passport to check in. Excuse me a second. You need your passport to check into a hotel. So we're going to tell him what happened. My phone's ringing. I'm sorry.
That's okay.
So we're gonna tell the cops what happened. They're gonna write you up a letter. Then I'm gonna take you to a hotel. We'll stop somewhere for you to eat. We're gonna take care of you. Don't worry about it. I was like, no reason this taxi cab needs to do this. So he takes me to the police. The police type up a report saying he can check in. He doesn't have a passport. It's all good. Takes me to like a midline hotel that's in like a, we'll say, safe-ish part of town. Checks me in, tells them the deal. They give me like a good rate, and so I'm basically like, I've got like $20 left. And so it was actually a 3-day weekend. So when I went to the embassy the next day, it was a Monday holiday here, and so the American embassy doesn't work because it's a Monday. So I'm like
Oh
stuck
my
there again, and
god.
I haven't eaten. So then Princess Diana dies like that day, like so it was
Holy shit.
huge, huge deal everywhere in Europe. Everyone was really upset by this. So it's like, people are in the streets, even in Spain. Uh, Made everything a lot more difficult, and just it was just a scary time. So I get to the embassy on Tuesday, and I tell them what happened. Like, sure, no problem. We can get you travel documents, get you back to the U.S. No problem. Well, the problem was all my stuff was in London because this was just like a weekend trip. So I said, I can't. I need to go to
Oh,
London because that's where all my stuff is. Like, oh, okay. Well, you need a full-on passport. You need to go to Madrid, and it's like 9:30 on Tuesday. I'm like, no problem. I'm leaving now. Like, oh, you'll never make it. They close at like 10:30, and it's like a 8-hour train ride. I'm like,
holy shit.
what was it? What? Ah, goodness gracious. So I go to the train station. I tell them what happened. I show them my note. I show them that I only have the $20, and the lady's just like, you know what? I've been in a bad spot. Why don't you just go? Just tell them that you talked to Maria, and when they ask you for your ticket on the thing, just tell them, and it should be okay. So I'm like, all right, that sounds good. So get on the train. The guy comes around for the ticket. I say, Maria said, here's my note. And the guy's like, okay, cool, cool. I've been in a bad spot. So like
Yep.
everywhere I hit, someone's being like way too nice to me.
Oh, that's
Uh,
so cool.
yeah, so I get all the way to Spain, or all the way to Madrid. I go to the embassy, and I basically camp out in front of the embassy in Madrid, which is a big city, and it was fairly safe. It's summertime, it's warm, and I fall asleep for a little bit. So I wake up. I still got I haven't eaten in like 3 days. Um, there's a guy selling food on the street. I grab like a little hot dog thing, eat that. The embassy opens. I go into the embassy, and this guy interviews me, and he's like kind of hard on me, like didn't feel like he believed me. He's like, "What do you do for a living?" I'm like, "I play paintball." He's like, "That's not a living. What do you do for a living?" I'm
Oh
like,
my god.
"I don't know what to tell you." So finally, I convince him. So I take all my money, I get a taxi cab back to the airport, and I fly to London because my sister had called and got my ticket extended. So I get back, but at every point, everyone was so nice to me for no reason. Just they didn't have to be. I've never seen those people again. Uh,
Mhm.
so that really made a really big impression upon me. So like every time I traveled after that, I was like, I'm gonna try to be as nice to everybody I possibly can. If it doesn't hurt me, I'm gonna be nice to them. So like the guys that would come up and ask for money, I always would, every time I get to a country, because back then it wasn't the euro, it was the country's own money. I'd
Yeah.
get change and small bills and big coins for those dudes. They'd come around and be like, "Hey, can I have $1?" I'd be like, "I got you." Everyone, I just tried to be out of my. We go to tournaments, and people would like ask us questions, or like want to take pictures or want autographs. Like I would be like, "No problem, I got you. I got the time. I'm going to do this." So I always kept in mind that first terrible experience, and
Mhm.
really once I overcame that, and because 18, you don't really know. At least I didn't know what I was doing. Um, that sort of, I proved to myself that I could sort of get myself through things. And honestly, anything that happened after that was just like silly, like not even an
Yeah.
issue. I have my passport, I have money, I have food, I'm good. I don't need much more. So that
Nice.
that's the sort of tone that I always try to travel with. Yeah. But one of my first funnest trips, we went to Spain. I'm sorry, we went to Germany, and we were playing Joy Division, and Yosh and I were playing, and then we wanted to stay in Berlin afterwards. And I didn't have a plan. I just had booked a hostel in Berlin. I didn't know how far the tournament was from Berlin. I didn't know how we were going to get there. I just was going to wing it. Maybe depend on the kindness of strangers, right?
I
So
love
we,
this.
and the whole time I'm asking people like, "Hey, how do I get to Berlin? After this, I'm going to Berlin." And everyone's just like, "You are really, really far away. Like, you should probably get to a train station, which is Cologne, but that's like a 3-hour drive. Like, there's nothing. You're not getting there unless you find some help." So I just started asking everyone like, "Hey, I need a trip to Cologne. I need a trip." And finally, we found this guy. And this was this older guy that was like, really liked paintball. Might not have been very good, but he was on the team that ended up becoming Syndicate. That was the pro team,
Ah, okay.
sponsored by like the big JT distributor of Germany. He's super cool dude, and he had lots of money. And I don't know that he always played that much, but he's a cool dude. So Yosh and I are like, all right, cool. We need to get to Berlin. He's like, I got you. We're gonna drive you to Cologne. It's gonna be really, really fast. We'll get you a train ticket from Cologne, then you'll get to Berlin. So okay, cool. So he's got this totally decked out like M5 Mercedes or M5 BMW station wagon, really, really nice car at the time. We hop in, he's telling us war stories, just like super animated, super fun guy to be around, just a little bit crazy, a little bit wild. And we get on the autobahn, and the autobahn in this part is slow bends with like forest really, really far away, and like no cities and nothing like landmarks, like just other cars. And we're like talking, and he's asking us questions, we're having a good time, and then we realize like we're going really, really fast. And you're like, do you how fast? We're going really fast, right? We're like, yeah, yeah, yeah. Hey, dude, how fast are we going? And we look over and look at the speedometer, and he's like, it's in kilometers per hour. And we're like, fast? Yeah. So Yoshi and I are like, what do you think? Like 100, 120, 100? We're like, I don't know. So we take a picture of the speedometer. Just we'll check this later. Come back later, develop a picture. It was like 245 kilometers per hour.
Holy
Like
crap.
135 miles an hour. And that was like average. Like we went faster. At one point, a motorcycle looked like a pretty fast motorcycle comes up next to us and revs at us. He's like, oh, no, you don't. And just starts racing this motorcycle through the Autobahn, like weaving out of cars. Like, and we're going a lot faster. And I didn't look at the speedometer then. I was just like, all right, if I get through this is going to be a really good story.
Yeah.
So that was
My
really cool. So he gets us to the train station. Everyone speaks German. No one speaks English. No one seems very friendly. Everyone's just like, giving us shitty looks, and because we're dressed like toddlers because we're Americans. And so we get on the train. It just feels like everyone's watching us, and everyone's like felt like very ominous. So like we're on guard, and then Yosh and I sit on the train, and Yosh is really, really young. Yosh is like 18, 19 at this point. And he sits up against the window, and I'm in the aisle, and he's like, all right, Mikey, you got this? Because I'm going to go to sleep. And I'm like, no, I think that he just nods off. And I'm like, oh, no. So I couldn't sleep this whole train trip because I was convinced that someone was out to do us some harm. So I stayed vigilant for this whole train trip, which was super, super stressful and terrible. So it was okay. So we get to the hostel that I booked. Everything's good there. And then we wake up, and there's a hostel breakfast, and we haven't eaten. So we're eating, and we're like, well, it's like 8:30. What should we do in Berlin? Like, I don't know. I have this guidebook. I have like the Fodor's travel guide, and I'm looking through it. And this old English dude walks in the hostel, and he's like, Terry, whatever his last name, Tours is leaving in a half an hour. You're going to walk through Berlin, and I'll show you all the sights. And we're just like, that sounds like a good plan.
sure.
So walk out there. There's a couple other girls, like some Swedish girls, and then us. And he's like, all right, I'm going to take you through all the things. It's not going to be very much money. We'll stop for lunch. We have a place. Like, you guys ready? We're like, let's do this. He said like a 3-hour or 2-hour tour, like not very long. It ended up being like 10 and a half hours. Turns out this guy owns the company. And then he has younger guys that come and do these tours, and they were sick or not available. So he hadn't done it for a while. She was like, I'm going to do it. And then he wanted to see everything. So we start walking out, and we're in East Berlin, was East Berlin. And so that's like the night of like the 1,000 broken glasses, which are like the start of the persecution of the Jews, where they went to the synagogues and broke out all the windows and, did all the bad things. So we're real close to there. So he walks us to that. He walks us past these buildings where he's like, this was, in World War II, this was this building, and there's still like bombed out buildings, and there's bullet holes, and like there's still shrapnel, and like this is like 2001, and they had started rebuilding West Germany, but they hadn't really gotten to West Berlin. They hadn't really gotten to East Berlin yet, so it was still like pretty untouched. It was pretty crazy to see like things that hadn't been touched since World War II. So as we're going through the tour, he started giving us this background. It turns out he was he was an English spy. He lived in West Berlin. He worked at the embassy of East Berlin, and he fought in World War II, not in Germany though, but he was in the English army, and now he was a spy. But he said he was like like a diplomatic embassy worker, but he was a spy. So as we go through spots, he's like, all right, see that building? And it's like got a Burger King in it. He's like, that was the SS Nazi headquarters.
Wow.
You'd never know it because it looks like just a normal old building. And every place he'd go through, you see that's the head of the German Luftwaffe. Like that was the Air Force building. And no, I mean they're not super proud of World War II, rightfully
Yeah.
so. There's no markers, there's no plaques, there's no nothing, there's no fanfare. It's just a normal everyday thing. So then we go through and we find this apartment complex, and there's sort of like a walkway, and there's a courtyard in the middle, and there's a children's playground. So we go to this children's playground and we sit down, and he just like sits and looks at us kind of ominously. And we're like, all right, what's going on, Terry? You know, like, talk to us. He's like, do you guys know where we are? We're like, yeah, we're at a children's playground at an apartment complex, and there's like, 5-year-olds playing and toddlers crawling around. He's like, this is the opening to Hitler's bunker. Like Hitler's bunker is underneath here. And we're like, oh my
Oh,
gosh. And just, yeah, that was pretty crazy. That was pretty intense to see like all the things from his point of view that no one there would say, like, this is what happened here. Or like,
yeah.
just, that was super crazy.
Yeah, unbelievable luck that you happened to get that person because so many other
Right.
people would just get the, like the PG walkthrough, but,
Right. The two
paintball
and a half, I
definitely.
gotta go. You saw the sights. Let's get out of here.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was pretty cool.
So wild that, something about our sport, we always kinda get, like, the locals view of stuff a lot of times because you're with a team from that area or
Right,
whatever. But
right, right.
you know what I mean? Like you could probably think of so many times that you got an experience that you really, even if you had the money for it, you couldn't pay to get that same experience. Instead,
Right,
you would see
yeah,
the city like a tourist in like the very cut and dry cookie cutter walkthrough that every
right,
single other person gets.
right. Yeah. Yeah, that was super cool. Super cool. The first trip we ever took was we went to Toulouse for their big World Cup, and I think it was Ironman that year before I played with Joy, and so I talked Davey and Matt into staying, and we are gonna go to Paris and have like the full on Paris experience. So after the event, we get taken to the train station and like we find a bottle of wine because that's very French to us. We get on the train and it's a sleeper train, but we don't have a wine opener. So we
Oh
like ended
no.
up breaking off the cork and putting it in and then like drinking until we pass out because we're all like, we were young, we were like 20, 21. So we pass out and then we stayed in a hostel that was in like a really cool part of Paris. It ended up being the Bastille area, which was back in the day there was a Bastille fort, and during the French Revolution they scaled the walls of the Bastille fort, let out the political prisoners as part of like the first stages of the revolution, as I understood it, and then went on to go get the bad guys and give them to the guillotine. And so the Bastille is gone, but in this place they put this giant monument, and there's a circle turnabout around it. And like it's a big deal in Paris. So we ended up being there on Bastille Day, which is like July 20th or so, and the
The
French
luck.
had just won the European Championship or the World Cup or some big soccer tournament, and everyone's celebrating anyway. And then it's Bastille Day on top of that, so we're like, let's go out. So we go out to the circle with the monument, and there's a giant stage set up, and there's like, I mean, a couple thousand people partying and listening to music and drinking and just having a good time. And there's all these kids running around the monument, and there's like a couple layers of fences, and they're over the fences and they're running around the monument, they're climbing up the monument, and they're just like fucking off and being kids. And we're like, that's what we need to do. We need to scale the Bastille Monument on Bastille Day in
Yeah.
France. This is totally making sense to me. So
Yes.
we had met these three girls in the hostel that we were hanging out with the whole week, and one of them I ended up dating for a little bit. The six of us are convinced this is a good idea. So we climb the fence, and the monument was kind of hard to climb, so we're like, boosting one up, pulling everybody else up, pull the girls up, and then there's another level, so we climbed to another level. And after about halfway through, the kids down there realize what we're doing, and we're probably not French, and they have fireworks, like little.
Oh my God.
So obviously they're lighting them and throwing them at us,
Of course.
and they're blowing up like on us, next to us, next to our faces. So we're like, oh my gosh, I can't believe this is happening. So we're just basically playing defense. So the girls are kind of like behind us, and Davey and Matt and I are like, batting fireworks out of the ground from these little, like, we're gonna get you. You better stop doing that. They're like, whatever. And they run and they come back and they've got more fireworks. They're getting them from somewhere. So for like 10 minutes, we're just like playing defense with these little French kids. So finally, like, we're gonna get down there, we're gonna get you. So we start climbing down, and then we're more vulnerable because we're not like playing defense. We get down there, we're like, oh, we're gonna get these kids, and they're just scattered. There's like gone in the crowd. But it was like the funniest and most hair-raising experience to climb the Bastille on Bastille Day. That was super cool.
Holy crap, dude. The chances and timing of that, like twice now, you've been at the right place at the right time. Like you could have
Right.
been there any day, but that and Princess Diana, like, is this something that was a pattern for you where you kept happening to luck out and be at places at
I
like
don't
the
know.
very best time to be there?
Maybe I think you are where you're supposed to be, right? Like at all times.
True,
Yeah.
true.
I was very fortunate to come across some of the incidents. Like you said, even if you got money, you don't get these experiences.
Yep.
Even with the
100%.
family now, there's no way I'm going to a concert with 2,000 drunk French people throwing fireworks. We're staying in the hotel where it's nice and safe. It's just our youth that was out there looking for a good time and looking for adventure.
Yeah, 100%. Well, still, it's awesome because like a lot of those things would be stuff that people would read about in the news, and you were like, "Oh, I was actually there during that day." And,
Yeah.
not a lot of people get that chance, especially you're not even from that country. So it's amazing.
Yeah.
Something I wanted to touch on real quick there is you said that you even started dating a girl from that area, so France?
No, so we met girls in the hostel and they all had gone to UCLA, or they're
Uh,
like still in school. They're my age in school.
oh, so they
Um,
were from your same area.
I was from Northern California and they were from Southern California. But so one of the
Gotcha.
girls was still from UCLA, but because we're on Ironman, I would be in LA all the time anyway. And then for tournaments with Joy Division, they would just give me money for a ticket. And it worked out where I could fly from Northern California to LA and then fly from LA to Europe cheaper than I could do it from San Francisco. And then I would just fly down like a couple days early and then hang out with her, go to the tournament, come back, hang out for another couple days because I'm booking my own tickets. And it was the same cost whether I stayed in LA for 2 days or 0 days.
Yep.
And then I could make my flights and it was just, less jet lag. So that was really cool.
Yeah, fucking sweet find. I what I thought you had meant was you met someone over there and then dated. I'm like,
No,
wait, how would you do the long distance
that
back
would be
then?
harder. Yeah, that would be
My
harder.
God, I don't know how people did it. It's wild. Um, I tried to do it years back with a girl from Indonesia in 2018, and this is when you can like FaceTime each other and stuff, and still that is miserable for when you can actually see each other in person. It sucks.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, so let me ask you, because it seems like you got your international like thing started a few years before I did, at least. My first big time was 21. Let's say that first time you went, was that your first time ever out of the country? I'm not gonna count
Yeah.
Canada, but that was your first time like out of the States or Canada?
Yeah, yeah. When I went with my sister when I was like 18, that was the first time out of the country. And then I started going to Europe for tournaments like maybe 2 years later. But when I had gone that first time, either the Millennium wasn't a thing, or they didn't have Pro, or it wasn't like on our radar, and the internet
Mm,
wasn't big. And then a lot of those teams were coming this way anyway. Um, so I didn't know much about paintball at the time. So when I
gotcha.
said to her, "I'm going to be everywhere," and she just rolled her eyes at me, I didn't know
Yeah,
how that was going to happen. I
I
just knew that
see.
was something I thought I was going to accomplish. So every, 5 events a year for 5 years or however long it was, I always made a point of staying at least a week and exploring. And so I thought, if I could do that enough, I could see enough countries and travel around. So I think by the end of it, I'd seen like almost every Western European country, at least the really, really touristy ones, like maybe didn't
Mhm.
get to Norway. I think everywhere else I was able to at least stay for a couple nights and see the sights and do the thing. And it was really cool.
Dude, you're very much like me in that same way. Like, I know a lot of guys who they get the traveling perks, but there's only like a select handful, like a dozen or so, that when they're there, you're like, hey, let's stay the week or two after and like backpack the area, or we're already over here. We've already taken the big 12-hour flight over the pond.
Yeah.
Like, we're here. Maybe we've been here before. Let's take a quick train ride or like a puddle jump flight and
Right.
see something else. And dude, I think that's like probably the best treasure you get in paintball is just how much you can see. Um, until, of course, things come up. You have a family or you start a
Right.
career. Like I can't do it as much anymore. Now I'll still take the little close events to Mexico or Central America, but I can't stay for 2 weeks after because I started a career last year. But in those early years, it was just like, okay, how much money do I have? Yeah, I think I could stay here another 2 weeks. I'll just
Right. Yeah.
last it out until I get home.
Hostels are cheap. I won't eat. I mean, even when I was first coming up in paintball, I had no money. I We paid for our own flights, and I worked to just pay the bare minimum. And I remember going to tournaments and having like $7
Yeah.
and not even being upset about it. Like I have $7. That's a good meal. So we'd go to restaurants or whatever, and I'd eat like saltine crackers and tip $1, and
Oh
drink
my
water,
god.
and then I was fine. Like looking back, that seems like such a terrible idea. And how did the adults that were on the team let me do that? But
Mhm.
it didn't seem like a problem at the time, and I'm all the better for it. So it wasn't like a big deal. But yeah,
Yep.
back then, like hostels were super cheap. The majority is the flight, right? Getting
Mhm.
you over there is the biggest expense. So $10 in a hostel, and you eat when you absolutely need to. And I wasn't buying trinkets, and I wasn't spending a lot of money, walking around a lot, and yeah, just trying to take advantage of the time I had. Didn't have the
Yeah.
money, but I had the time.
Well, in your head, I already know what you were thinking. You're like, "Damn, I barely have enough money, but if it's between not doing this and doing it at whatever, like, kinda, struggle level of it, I'm gonna go do it. Like, how can I say no to this?"
How can you say no? Yeah. There are even events where like I was sick or just worn down and from whatever. And I was like, I gotta go. Like, I'm not gonna be here again. This is my chance to do this and my opportunity. I
Yep.
know I'm gonna be older and married and have kids and have more responsibilities. And I need to take advantage of this when I could. So I pushed through a lot of mental, like, I just want to go home and sleep and
Mhm.
lick my wounds because the tournament didn't go as well, or whatever. I really, I'm glad I did. The older version is telling my younger self, like,
Yep.
that was awesome, man. Good job. Good job pushing through because we needed
Yeah.
it.
You have all those stories, and if you didn't go do that because you were just like, "Well, I don't have the $1,000 to do this right," you would be regretting that right now. Like,
Yeah.
I've regretted every time I've ever said no to
Yeah.
certain trips
Yeah.
way more than ones where it's like, "Man, that was rough," or "I was exhausted or starving at the time." Still, you survive it, and at the end of it, you're like, "Alright, that was sweet. I'm happy I did that."
Totally. Totally.
Yeah. Um, also, I'm sure you probably already know this one, but continental breakfasts at hotels are your best friend.
Yeah.
When you have no money, it's like you can just Google hotels that have continental breakfast, and sometimes you can just walk in like you already stayed there, own the place,
Like
eat
you
as
own the
big of a
place.
breakfast as you can, and then leave. And you never even stayed there. And I've done that. I've had weekends where I had $0 left, and I'm like, well, I got to eat the rest of this weekend. And yeah, hotels were there for me.
I never did that, but when we stayed at tournaments that had continental breakfasts and they had like anything packaged, I always took extra and put the packages. Or I'll like the Sunday, I'd pack my bag with like as many of the croissants as I could get,
Yeah.
and then space them out for the week, or like grab the bottled water that the events provided, or the fruit or whatever. Like food was
Hmm.
just secondary. I just needed to like get as far as I could. Let me turn this off again. Um, so yeah, uh, yeah, that was fun.
Yeah, food's just energy out there. Of
Food is
course, it'd be nice to go back in your current place and, order the things you want, but back then, it's just like, whatever. Every time I see a free granola bar, put it in the backpack, save it for when
right,
I need it,
right.
and, fast as long as you can. But what I was getting at it that you were young the first times you did it. I'm not gonna count the first time with your sister because you kinda went there knowing someone,
You're
and
right.
London is pretty similar to the States in a lot of ways, but those first times going and being truly on your own, just you and your road dogs as young adults in Europe, like, how was that? Was that, like, culture shock for you compared to, where you came in from in Cali?
Uh, I never thought of it as culture shock. I mean, starting in Western Europe, you see a lot of white people anyway, so that part wasn't as different.
Mhm.
But I mean, no, I just was like entrenched with the concept of traveling, and the people we had met, like the locals we had met, and and just seeing history as much as possible. And like
Mm,
nothing could be stressful. Traveling with Matt Marshall is the most stressful thing you can do
really?
when you have your passport. That guy, he is he makes you work for it, man. He's such a good dude to have around, but like, he wants to sleep in, he wants to linger at museums extra long, he wants to forego certain things, and he's awesome, but he makes it stressful.
Ah, I see. So, yeah, I mean, when I had Thomas on the show, he talked about how you were very much the don't think about it, say yes to whatever the opportunity is in front of you guy.
Yeah.
And Maddie is not that guy, or it was
Well,
more like the
it's not that he's not, it just he works at a different timetable.
mm,
So he wants to like sleep in a little bit longer when it's like, well, I want to do this tour and the bus leaves at 8. So we got to be there at 8. So we can't be there at
mm,
8:30 and expect to get the tour, right? So he's like 7:55, like, I'm up, let's go, come on, we're gonna miss him. We're gonna be stuck in the hotel that's in the middle of nowhere
oh my
with no
God.
other way to get out unless we get this bus today.
Yep,
Yeah.
I
But
see.
but he was
Uh,
he was good to have on the road for all the good stories.
Oh, I'm sure. I'm looking forward to get him on here too. And because I've heard over the years so many different stories, whether it's from like Jawbreaker or any of the old movies that a lot of you guys have been in, or War Pig. But yeah, it just seemed like there was that constant group, including you, talking about getting into wild stuff over there. You guys would write about it where you experience the event and then be downtown, and there was this more lawless side of it where like, I would always hear about, a group of you getting in like a brawl or a bar fight with a group of some wherever you
Locals.
were,
Yeah,
locals in that
angry
European
locals.
place.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There always seem to be. I think that, when you travel and after the events, when we were still at the site, the guys that wanted to go out from the American teams would go out. So there'd be like, three guys from that team and four guys from that team. And there'd be like, there could be 15, 20 dudes. And inevitably there's someone that's a little bit too sauced and thinks we're 20 dudes, we can do whatever the heck we want. And they start pushing the locals around. And at a certain point, the locals will be like, what are you doing? So
Yeah.
there have been some. We were in Spain, and I think some of the old hurricane dudes. I don't remember who it was. I don't even know if I knew them really, except by sight. Just started getting really jawsy with some guys in Spain, and we had to. We basically got pushed up against the bar, and people started getting hit, and the bartender pulled us over the bar one by one. This giant hulking man put us behind the bar for safety, got up on the bar with a baseball bat and just started screaming in Spanish at these dudes with
Holy
pointing the
crap.
baseball bat at them. He's like, "You guys go over there," and he gets like the bad guys over to the corner. He's like, "You guys get out of here!" And like, I'm gonna hit you with the bat if you don't go. Like, in Spanish, like telling us. So we're like, "Yeah, yes, sir." So we, stuff like that was pretty common. Pretty common. I guess they're funny stories now, but at the time I was like not in for it. I'd rather just hang out and be cool and not try and fight with the locals. But
Yeah, from what I know of you, you're a pretty mellow dude. Like, I don't think
yeah,
that you're the, the spark that's setting this stuff off.
of course, I'm just there sometimes and wishing I hadn't been there when someone was getting grumpy. And
Yeah.
I don't really drink. I liked hanging out and being social, but like I didn't really want to get drunk. And plus, drinking's expensive, you
Yeah.
know. And I don't know what ultimately it serves except for a little stress relief at the time. But I was excited to get to the spot the next day, and I wanted to be having my wits about me because I had to navigate the train station with the taxi cab drivers that are going to try and take advantage of you. And you know,
Hmm.
one time going back to the money thing, we were going to go to Fred and Fabrice's house in France after Toulouse, and they live right on the border of Switzerland, and they're going to let us stay there for like a week. And so it was Yosh and I again, and we were like, we want to be really good housemates. We don't want to come and like take advantage of them because Fred and Fabrice are just super cool dudes, and they've always been nothing but nice to us. So I saved up money, and we're like, we're going to buy all the food for the week. We're going to be really good house guests. So we drive all night from Toulouse to his house. We get to his house, and I didn't realize it, but gypsies are a really big problem where he lives. And so
Hmm.
all the windows have these metal shutters. So at night, they close the windows with these like metal gates that you can't get into the house from because I
Yeah.
guess gypsies will break in at night. So I didn't know that. It's pitch black when we get there. We fall asleep in one of the rooms, and I wake up, and Yosh is still asleep, and it's pitch black in the room. And I'm exhausted from a tournament. We didn't sleep very much. We went on a bunch. And so I just go back to sleep. And then I think Yosh probably did the same thing. You wake up, I'm asleep, it's pitch black, must still be nighttime. He goes to sleep. So at like 4 o'clock in the night, Fred sticks his head in the room. He's like, "Are you guys gonna wake up?" We're like, "Yeah, oh sure." Is it morning? He's like, "It's 4 o'clock in the afternoon." We're like, "What?" So he hits the button and the shade opens up and it's just like a full-on sunny, bright summer day. And we're like, "Oh my gosh,
Oh my
the
god.
whole day here." So so he's like, "Oh, you guys want to go get food? Like you mentioned yesterday." I'm like, "We're totally let's go get food." So we get in the car and we drive down to like their big grocery store and we're like, "What do you like to eat?" He's like, "Oh, whatever you guys want, it's okay." So we're like picking out meat and cheese and bread and just everything we can think of that we're going to cook and we're going to eat and snack, and we got stuff to do. And then we came to the water, and the tournament we came from in Toulouse, everyone's drinking bottled water. And
Mhm,
in the States, that wasn't as big, but we just thought, all right, you don't drink the water here.
mhm.
So we come up to the water department, and there's like 1,000 different choices of water, and it's all in French, and I don't speak any of it. And he's watching us, and we're like, "What should we get, Fred?" He's like, "Oh, it's all the same. It's just water." All right, cool. So just the closest one was this big bottled water with like a pink label, and he watches us put it in the cart, and then we go to pay for it. And he watches me pay for it, doesn't say anything. Then we get home, and he's like, "Why did you guys buy that water?" We're like, "Well, what do you mean?" "Because we're thirsty." He's like, "This is the water for pregnant ladies." We're like, "What?" It's like, "Yeah, it's got like minerals and stuff in it for pregnant ladies." We're like, "What do you mean? What the?" So I taste it, and it tastes like it was dirt. Like there was dirt in this water. It was
Oh
clear,
god.
but it was terrible. He's like, "Yeah, let me show you another thing. Come here." And we go outside to his front, and he points to this mountain like way off in the distance. He's like, "You see that? That's Mount Evian. I live in Evian." We're like the tap water, Evian.
Yeah.
Like, ugh, like
Oh
I
my
saved up all this money and I bought this water. Not that water is expensive, but like so funny, so funny. So we dumped out all the water and we ended up leaving, and we filled up all that pregnant lady water with Evian water, and no one wanted our water. Wherever we went, they're like, "No pregnant water lady for me."
nice. Oh my god, dude, that's hysterical. So that's where Evian's from, and yeah, what
Mount
you
Evian, yeah.
why did he not stop you when he said, "Yeah, grab whatever water"? Like,
He
why
must have
didn't
been,
he say
he
it
must have
then?
been tired too, or maybe he didn't speak French either. I don't know. Silly
Yeah.
Fred. Yes, I love Fred. Fred's a
Oh,
Fred's a genuine good dude.
hmm. What's his last name again?
Halmon, Fred and Fabrice. They're like the Tauntaun guys that were like super badass killers, sort of before I think Axel's generation.
Yeah, yeah.
We're like a consistently good team, and like a really really good European team. Besides the Russians, I think they're like the best European team.
Gotcha. Yeah, I think it was always kind of between Joy, Tauntauns, and Russians, with, like, Russians being kind of the standout, but if there was ever 2 other mentionables, it's Joy
Right.
Division and
Right.
Tauntauns, and I do remember those old jerseys. I remember seeing Fabrice, I remember Magud from, Joy. I think I got to meet him once, and, like, man, there's a lot of legends in that era too
Yeah.
that are, like, they're the equivalents to all you guys, like
Right.
the Maximuses and all that old guard of the Russians,
Right.
when guys like Mishka were still a kid,
Yeah.
and,
Mishka Leopardhead
yeah.
was a kid. Yeah.
Did you guys always get to rub elbows with all those dudes when you were, out and about, players'
Yeah,
parties,
so,
all that?
most of the teams are really friendly, especially the Swedes because we had played with them. The Russians, I don't know how many of them actually spoke English at first, and they had this owner guy that looked really intense, and, he always wore, like, lots of sunscreen. I think he had some sort of allergicness to the sun.
Hmm,
I don't know if they didn't speak English, but they didn't give me the sense of, like, we're here to, like, hang out and be cool. Like, they came in
yeah,
the sense of, like, we're here to fuck you up, and we're not gonna talk to you about it this whole time. So, they're a little intimidating, even though they were wearing their silly Evel Knievel pajamas. They were still intimidating, and there wasn't a lot of, like, cross communication. No one was trying. I remember
yeah,
Andy Kopkok was on our team, and we refed Sweden, and he was Czech. He spoke Czech, and I guess Czech and Russian were close enough where he could, like, give them the speech. Back in the day in seven man, like the head ref had to give each team like If you don't call yourself out when you're hit, it's a 1-for-1. Yeah, like a full explanation every single game, every single like don't go out of bounds, just all the stupid rules that everyone should know anyway. We had to spend 20 minutes to tell them, and Andy would always do it in Russian, and they'd always like shake their heads and be da da cool cool, but none of them ever spoke English. None of them ever asked any questions. None of them. So yeah, I don't know. That tournament in Sweden we refed, and so Mag had got us over, and he wanted to like, have a good reffing squad, so he brought us over. He put us up, and like it was a really good time. I don't know if have you been to Sweden in the summertime?
I've never been to Sweden. It's still on the list.
Gosh, it's a gorgeous place, and from what everyone explains it to us as, it's like it's cold and dark and unhospitable for 4 to 6 months out of the year. So for the other 6 months or so, like everyone is just trying to live 12 months of freedom and excitement and party, especially like the young people. So like
Yeah.
everyone's like super friendly, and everyone's like going out and having a good time and just being like really really cool and really really fun to be around. So we had gone out like the Sunday before the event or the Saturday, we'd ref a day, and then we went out, stayed out all night, not really realizing because the sun stays up until like 1 or 2 in the morning, and had a warped sense of time. By the time we realized like we should probably get back and start thinking about going to the tournament, it's like 4:30. So
Holy
we take a
crap.
cab back to our hostel. It's not very close, or the place Mag had found for us, and it's like 5:30. We got to be at the tournament by like 6:30 or 7. Like there's no
Oh
point.
my God.
Tell the taxi cab driver we're coming. Have him stay out there. We just grab our paintball stuff. We change into our reffing stuff. We get back in the car, and he takes us to the place. And it was like a public park in like downtown Stockholm. So it's a pretty well lit area and like nice and safe. But back then the bunkers they're super bunkers, but each bunker had its own fan and its own battery pack.
Hmm.
It kept it inflated, and they're all deflated, and the sun is like super low and pretty bright. So we all just picked a bunker and unzipped it and turned the fan on, so it like went up and then just fell asleep in its shadow. So there's like the 8 or 9 of us sleeping on the field, and people are like, "Oh man, we thought there were homeless people here. We are gonna call the cops. All the Ironmen are out here sleeping on the field. All the refs,
It's
we're
the
just
ref
like
squad.
hungover and dehydrated and just like a mess because we've been sleeping on the ground with like our goggles as our pillows or like a sweatshirt or whatever, just
Oh,
totally a mess. So I remember waking up, and teams are starting to show up, and like we're all just super dehydrated and super thirsty. I go into like the tent that's like the officials tent. We unzip it or break into it, and the only thing that's in there is Red Bull. There's just flats and flats and flats of Red Bull, but it's like warm Red Bull, not even cold Red Bull. And Red Bull in Europe
God.
is different because they can put more caffeine or more like amphetamine in it. Or I don't know what, there's something else in it. So we're just like slowly drinking hot, gross Red Bull. Ugh, I still have the taste in my mouth. It's just like drinking bad velvet or like lint balls, like
Oh my
slowly
God.
sliding across your teeth.
But if you didn't drink this, you were not making it through that day.
Yeah.
No sleep, being up, standing in one place, reffing. It's already like kind of boring unless you're like
Yeah.
reffing a really good match. But
Yeah.
dude, that had to be the most brutal day ever.
Having the players yell Marshall at us, and Europe back then there wasn't the same sponsorship dollars in the sports. The people that played were the ones that could afford to play. Where in the US, if you had a kid that was really good, the teams could sort of support him, or the sponsors could support him, so he could make it to practices. And then in Europe, that wasn't the case. If you didn't have money to pay your full fare, you were not playing paintball. So you have a lot
Yeah.
of like older guys that were paying a lot of money, and it seemed like they wanted more attention because they were maybe used to something in their regular life where no one said no to them and no one sort of
Yeah.
stood up to them. So they expected a certain level of service that maybe we were unfamiliar with.
Yeah.
um so being drunk and having Red Bull and having these guys yell at us because they thought they hit someone across the field, and every tournament is like that, but to have
Yeah.
people be upset about it was funny.
They already expect you to sprint across the field and make
Right,
every check they call
right,
while
right,
they're shooting the shit out of your ribs and stuff.
right.
And now you are like basically still drunk or hungover. So that's happening even less. This had to be like their nightmare tournament in a
and,
way.
and they would like, I mean, more than in America, they would yell at us that they hit somebody, or like
Yeah.
that guy's definitely hit, much more than in the United States. or you
Mhm.
could tell the difference where, yeah, so that made it a little bit more challenging. The only thing that was nice about that tournament was Maggot had a big thing where he thought back players were the devil. So he essentially removed all the corner bunkers. So none of these fields had corner bunkers, which in 2002 was a really, really big deal. And I think
Yeah.
that kind of set the trend of paintball in a certain, pushed it along in that direction. Because certainly there's fields like
Ah.
there's either not a snake corner, or there's the snake corner is a tiny little cake and it's hard to make, and even if
Yeah.
you make it there it's hard to live out of. He
Yep.
kind of set the trend for that.
Yeah, something that's less dominant that just slows down that whole side of the field
Right,
forever. Like, it
right.
actually looks directly down the wire no matter what. So, yeah, I get that. What would you say would have been worse, though? Reffing this tournament like that, which you did, or if you had, that whole night situation and then you had to play that tournament?
Oh, playing all the time. Yeah, we did that plenty of times where we stayed out all night and then still played. That was fun. I couldn't do that now, but when we're, when you're 20
Yeah, yeah.
and you're playing against the Europeans, especially, that were just the rich guys that could afford it. But I mean, we'd play guys and they'd be like mean mugging us and telling us they're going to kick our asses. And then we'd play them. And they wouldn't even stand behind bunkers. You're just like, there was, just like 30-second games, because we played the novice and the amateurs. And then we're like, oh, that was weird. I wonder why they're mean mugging us. And then they come off like, oh, we were just kidding. Can we get a picture with you? That was the coolest shit ever. And they're
Ah,
like, hugging us and like wanting the pictures. Like, oh, it's so cool when you shot me like that. Like, it was a different experience than what you see here.
that's sweet. Well, at least okay, so they did still kinda like, they realized your guys' prowess, like, "Oh, these are those pros from the States," and
I
is there like that star kinda level thing where you're
like, I mean, because back paintball back then, you played everyone. So we'd play 8 prelim games and we played 2, 3 pros, and everyone else was like an amateur. So like certainly the amateur guys were like, we're just here to hang out, like we're just here for the experience. We don't expect to win. If we do, it's a bonus, but we just want to like shake your hand and say we got bunkered by you guys. Like that's
yeah,
cool to us, right? But the pro guys were more like standoffish, like, oh, you come here to Europe and uh, you should stay in America. And we got a
mhm,
lot of that. Like a lot of the German teams, I think, were a little bit like, why are you here? You shouldn't be here. You have your own tournaments. And like, not the Tauntauns, but there are a couple other French teams that were like kind of not happy to see us there.
yeah. No, I get that. I feel like most everywhere I've been has been super friendly, but there's been 2 or 3 random times in my career where I've been in small town areas, and sometimes it's not even a paintball player. It's just like a random person when you're out doing the nightlife, like, "Oh, what's up, American? Yeah, here to take our girls, here to make our money worth less, here to blah, blah, blah." And you're just like getting guilt tripped and you're like, "Oh, geez, man, like I'm here to connect with you guys. Like I'm
Yeah,
trying to be respectful as possible,
yeah.
but thanks for making me feel like an asshole."
We pay the toll of like the ugly American tourists, because that's
Mhm.
more common than the dude that just shows up in sandals with an avocado in his pocket and like wants to hang out, right?
Yeah. True, true. Um, yeah, I always say you wanna like you want to look like a traveler, not a tourist,
Right,
like don't look like a Disney family. Don't stand out like just this, awe-inspired photography person, or don't be that like drunk, unmindful idiot that just kind of is doing what they want wherever they want. Like,
right.
try to immerse
Try
and
to
do
fit
what
in.
they're doing and, blend in.
Totally.
Yeah. I was wondering, so man, you've had some good ones. I only know a few people who've like lost passports or
I
some of these
lost my
things.
passport twice, Joe. Twice. In the same, oh, you want to hear a crazy story?
Yes,
We
please.
went, we're on excessive. We go back to Spain. We were playing in Madrid. Um, we play the event. I think we won every single European event except for that one. We got second in that one. That was super devastating. I think it was the last one of the year. So then everyone's kind of bummed out anyway. The next morning, like Monday morning, I had to go home. I had something to do, and I was driving. So we stopped at the airport gas station, and they needed to see my passport to pay for the gas. So I have a team credit
Hmm,
card, show my passport, pay for the
weird.
gas, all good. Get to the airport, return in the car, get to the boarding to check in for the flight, and I don't have my passport. It's just fucking gone, and no one wants to stay with me. and we're like, anyone, like, like the team will pay, like anyone. And we're just like, no, I gotta go. This is a terrible event. I'm getting out of here. So I'm just by myself. So I'm like, that's okay. I've done this before. I know where the embassy is, and I know this is the place I need. I know this whole thing. But
Yeah.
I'll probably find my passport because I had it like 20 minutes ago. Like, this isn't a big deal. So I go back to the rental car place. I get my old rental car back. I go back to the gas station, and I'm like, listen, I was just here. I paid for the gas. I must have put my passport down. Do you have it? And they're just like, no. Look everywhere. It's gone. Just fucking gone. So I'm like, all right, well, I know what to do. So I'll just go to and it's the same weekend, the same 3-day weekend that I lost my passport 11 years earlier when I was with my sister. Same 3-day fucking weekend in the middle of summertime, whatever weekend that is. And it's a Monday morning.
In the
So
same country.
Same country. So I go to the same embassy, and it's closed because I figured, but I had nothing else to do. So I hang out and I did touristy things, and I think I drove out of town and found this castle that was pretty cool and walked around. Wasn't upset. Everything was fine. Get to the embassy the first thing in the morning. So I'm gonna try and make like an early flight because I got to get back. I go to the embassy, wait in line. I get this guy. I give him my story, fill out my paperwork, and it's the same fucking dude that grilled me the first time. And I'm pretty sure that I recognize him, but I'm not sure if he recognizes me. So he gives me this really weird look. And that would make me think, like, why is that guy looking at me? Fuck, that's the same guy. So he gets my passport and he disappears, and he's gone for like 45 minutes. And I'm thinking, I'm going to Guantanamo. This dude is like, no joke. So he comes back like with a supervisor, kind of like a pit boss in a casino. And he's like staring me up and down and kind of walking behind me and like checking out what I'm carrying and making me really, really nervous. And he's like, have you ever lost your passport before? I'm like, yeah. He's like, where were you? I was like, well, I was in Seville, but I had to come to Madrid. And he's like, do you know when that was? And I didn't realize it was the same weekend. He's like, it was the same weekend like 11 years ago.
Holy crap.
Is it? All right. He's like, do you think that's a coincidence? I'm like, I don't think there's coincidences, but I don't know how to explain it. It's like, so what do you do for a living?
Yeah, this is looking weird.
I play paintball, but now I have a paintball field. Do you want to see the web address? And I pull up the web address on my phone and show it to him. And he's just like, okay. Do you remember last time you got your passport? Like what you did? I'm like, I came here. I talked to someone here. It's like, do you remember me? Because it was me. I'm like, yeah. And he's like, all right, we need to talk about this. Goes back, comes back. So we need to put you in a special room. Takes my bags, puts me in this special room. That's like, it looks like it's where they put the bad guys. And I'm there for 2 hours. Knock on the door, ask for water, ask to use the restroom. They don't answer. It's locked. I'm just trapped. And I'm thinking, this is bad, like real bad. So they go through my stuff. I guess they tried to call the business. They tried to call a couple different things. And they finally come back and they're like, all right, well, we're going to let you go, but we want you to know that you shouldn't lose your passport anymore in Spain. And I was like, I got you. Don't worry. I'm not
lose your passport. Like, what is this scam you're doing?
Yeah, man, that was, I really thought, out of all the crazy stuff I'd gotten into, I really thought I was going to jail or like getting extradited back to the US, or I thought something bad was going to happen. Like,
yeah, dude. That was going to be one of my questions for you is you ever like have a close call with the law or like go to jail in another country? And I'm happy you tell that story, dude, because I know that feeling. And how is that like that crapping your pants feeling where you're like, I'm across the sea from my homeland. Nobody over there can do anything about it here. Like,
I mean, if anyone would help, it'd be the U.S. Embassy, and they're the ones that have got me in the box. I didn't tell my family because I wasn't really concerned. I knew that this would just be a day delay and I'd be home. I didn't email anyone. Like I think my girlfriend at the time, she didn't know anything. I just said I'll be back later. Didn't really say why. It just was like I could have disappeared. They could have like Khashoggi'd me, and no one would have ever been the wiser. It's like, oh, he lost his passport, and then something must have happened to him. I don't know. That was a little bit scary. But no, I've never, other than that, I've never been in trouble with the law or like, gotten robbed or anything. I think Thomas talked about it. We were in Morocco in Spain.
Yeah.
Or after Spain, we went to Morocco, and we went to the Casbah, which is like the super touristy, like old town fort. He made it sound like we're in the middle of nowhere. And so we took a taxi cab from the port to the Casbah, which I had planned. And then as we drive in, there's all like the tour guides, like the young dudes just hustling to make some money. And the taxi cab driver says something to him, like in Arabic. and it just was like, hey, we got some dumb Americans, come get them, like kind of shit. So he drops us off and takes off, and there's like this big gate to this old Casbah, like super cool, like Rock the Casbah song that's about this place. And they
Mm,
just start crowding us and like really being aggressive, like you should let us show you around, it'll be cheaper. And like we're like, no, no, we're okay, we'll figure it out, like we're just gonna walk through. And you're like, no, 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 there's only one way in and one way out, and if you don't know it, you're gonna die in here. We're just like, oh, there's only one way in, one way out, well then we're not gonna go, I'm already on the out, I'm leaving. So we go to turn, and they've got, there's like me and Thomas and like probably like 10 dudes, like 10 like young dudes,
yeah.
and they end up getting in between us so we're not like next to each other. And then kind of spin me around with one guy that's getting really aggressive in my face. And so I don't know where Thomas is. And the guy has this like kind of like sling bag over his shoulder. And I look around, and there's everyone's just like bumping up against me. And I'm gripping my passport and my wallet and my phone in my shorts as hard as I can, because that's like, they can beat me up, but as long as I have these, I feel like I'll be okay. I'm
Yeah.
gripping as hard as I can, and I look back, and I think the guy had taken off this sling pocket thing, but I didn't see that part. He has it in his hand, and he reaches back, and I think he's gonna punch me in the face. And I just like duck my head down and try and like shield my face, and he throws it over my head to somebody else, and then he gets in my face and it's like, all right, we really need to do this, I'm gonna be your guy. And I'm just like, oh, I didn't get hit, cool. And like I turn and like swing at my arm and swim out of this pile, and I grab Thomas, like, we're getting the fuck out of here. We just start walking down the street, and like they slowly just like dissipate. But I thought for sure that guy was going to punch me and take my wallet, and I was going to end up destitute in Morocco. Like that was really, really scary. Really scary.
Oh my God, I imagine. And once again, probably no one really knows where you are because they think you're
No,
on the other
it was
side.
a it was an unplanned trip. Yeah, that's for sure.
There's no tracker on your phone for the wife
No,
or mom back home.
yeah,
There's
yeah. Just like, I'll be back on Thursday.
dude, unbelievable. Like that is such a different time to me because whenever I started traveling, it's like it's pretty easy, even if you run into a problem, like somebody can through your phone, like, wire you Apple Pay money or
Yeah,
something like that.
nice.
And back
Or at
then
least you
when
can
you're
say where you are. Like, I'm in Morocco at the Casbah, and these guys are giving me a hard time. At least there's like a last trace of you, right?
yeah, but, something you said in the very beginning is, like, everybody seemed to help you, like, there are friendly people where it's just working out, and dude, I don't know what it is, but it seems like there's some magic to that where when we're in other places, um, I don't know, there's this warmness, this welcomingness where people want you to see the best side of their country, and we probably do it here for people that come here, you know what I mean? But we don't get to experience it because we are here. So it just doesn't feel different or like any magic. But I don't know. Does that you know what I'm talking about? Does that seem
Yeah.
like it happens
I
like
always I always am like, when we go to some places, I'm always saying like the kindness of strangers. We have the kindness of strangers. If we get in ourselves into a situation where we don't know where we're going or we don't know something, we'll depend upon the kindness of the strangers, and we'll figure it out. We'll find
Mhm.
someone, it'll be fine. So like my wife and I travel quite a bit now. She's not gotten to travel as much as I have, and very much loves it. So, every summer we take at least one big trip, usually a couple, and we're always in a situation where we don't know where something is. And I'm always telling her, like, it's the kindness of strangers. When people are here, you be extra nice to them, and then you go there, you can cash in this karma credit, and people are going to be nice to you. And so for the most part, I mean, I tell stories about like the guy almost punching me because it was a noteworthy event, not normal. Like, but you were right, everywhere
Mhm.
we go, it's like people would go out of the way to be nice to us, or like, once they realize, I don't think dressing like we dress is hard to spot us. They know that we're American or certainly not from there. And then people would like, try extra hard or be a little bit nicer to us, except for maybe in Paris, because
Yeah,
they get so many tourists anyway, and all the real Parisians leave. So everyone that's left there is just like customer
100%.
service stuck with the ugly Americans that like do you have any ranch? I need
Yeah,
some
yeah.
ranch with this food. Like, what is, get out of here.
Yep. Dude,
Yeah,
I
I was trying
totally
to be nice
agree.
to people as much as possible. I live in a university town, UC Davis, and it's a really big college town, and there's a lot of international students. And so like I have a lot of them come through the paintball field. Like we see a lot of them just like walking around downtown. And so I'm always trying to be extra nice to whoever I can be, because I feel like it's a karmic pay-in to the system of kindness of strangers. Like, how can you go to a country and
Mhm.
expect it when you're not doing that for them here, whenever possible?
Yep. I love that you talk about that because that first time it seemed like everybody really helped you. And then after that, you took that lesson from it. And it's like, okay, I'm just gonna be as nice as I can to everybody. And maybe you owe it to people because they already gave it to you, but maybe also now you're putting in some credits for like the karmatic future. And I
Yeah,
try to do the same. Like not necessarily like I'm doing this to expect it, but
right.
I believe very much in energy and like the ebbs and flow in the universe, and what you're putting out there, you get back. So if you're just always Mr. Positive and helpful and a good guy, and then it seems like whenever you come into those situations, there's that same like mirrored version of you on the other side going, here you go. Here's the couple bucks you needed to get on that train to the airport or whatever it is.
It's the world I want to live in. It's the world I want to participate in. And so it's the world I assume I'm going into when I need a little bit of help. Because I don't want to go in thinking this guy's going to rob me because that's not the world I want to live in. I want to live
Yeah,
where the guys are going to be nice. And so that's how I put it out there, like I choose to be a participant both ways.
true. That's something I learned very much only in like the past, I don't know, decade of my life, like more the adult life, is that um, you really can live in whatever world you think you're going to live in. Like there's those people that they constantly put themselves around dangerous situations or sketchy people. And naturally, what happens? They live in a sketchy world, right? Like you can't have both. You can't keep all those sketchy friends or drug addict acquaintances from high school or whatever and think that everything's going to be amazing and people are going to be very polite to you and you're going to be with those other social circles of like good standing citizens. So you kind of almost get to choose. And when you go into it with that mindset of like, hey, this is the world that I want to be in. So that's what I'm gonna like put out there, then naturally, like law of attraction or whatever, it
Yeah,
keeps you in
whatever.
that world.
Are you
And
just
it's funny.
viewing it through that lens, right? Until
Mhm.
proven otherwise, until some, because I've never been robbed, I've never been pickpocketed, I've never been like, nothing bad has happened to me. And certainly I'm
Mhm.
sure there were opportunities for that, but I
Yeah.
just put out that that wasn't what was going to happen.
100%. I think that let's say the robbery thing, there's always still chance of that just because even if you're doing everything right, probability is low that it'll be you, but it's not impossible. So um I know too many people and even myself where we were doing everything right and it was just wrong place at the wrong time. But that's the part that kind of it always exposed like, well, I guess because of the place I was in and alone, I made myself a target or whatever. So you never put anything out there that would happen, but you probably also, whether it was conscious or not, you avoided like those situations where you would be in unnecessary
Yeah.
danger.
Or maybe I just paid it forward by getting my passport stolen the very first trip. I mean, after that, I remember being in quite a few places though. We get on the bus or we get on the train, we're let out into the train station. There's like Americans waiting to get on the train to go somewhere else. And there's just like guys panicking, like, oh my God, guys don't stay here. Like the pickpockets are the worst. Like you'll just be standing on the bus and you won't even see them. You just feel hands on your body, like grabbing at stuff and just like freak me out about stuff. And so we're like,
Yeah.
all of us are like, oh my gosh, this is the worst place ever. Everyone's gonna like, everyone's grinning behind a shadow with a knife out to get us.
Yeah.
Um, so you stay a little bit more vigilant and you hold on to your stuff a little bit more, put your backpack
Hmm.
on the front, or it's just I think as long as you're aware, as long as you're not staring off at butterflies and leaving your bag unattended, like
Yeah.
you're okay.
Yeah. Awareness is the key factor there because like, there are places like that, but people's own perception from their own experience they'll try to to convince you that it's really like that all the time. And it's like, well, you're not taking away the factor of it's personalized in a way. Like it might have happened to you for a reason because you were the dumbass American wearing a Rolex in the wrong street or whatever.
Yeah,
I think there are some areas where I was happy I got the warning that pickpocketing is more frequent in Rome because people were constantly trying to pat my pocket in the Vatican. Like if you were in a dense crowd, the people passing by you would try it real quick. And you were
yeah.
like, "Oh my god, dude!" But it's
Maybe
just the nature of the beast. Like you're in dense
that's just
crowd.
The Vatican high. Pat your pockets real quick, little way from the Vatican to say hello.
Yeah, and that could be it too. But like beyond that, like my dad, he's like in his 60s now. He still to this day is that guy where he's like, "Oh, what are you doing this weekend?" I'm going to play a championship in Mexico. It'll be Joey. I wish you'd stop going to Mexico. You know, you're going to get kidnapped and ransomed back to us by a cartel. And it's like, it's weird to get those stories told to you almost as like in their mind, it's like fact. And it's just some perception from like realistically, like the mass minority of stories where, yeah, that stuff happens, but like also you can get kidnapped in Detroit or Niagara Falls or whatever. So I wish some people would stop painting such a blanketed generalization on areas where it's just like, oh, you're going there, look out for that. And then you could like freak people out or make them not want to go there.
I think traveling in general, like, helps you dispel the worst case scenario stories you hear of, like, this is this city has got this going on. You go there and you realize that that's not rampant. It's not everywhere. Maybe it has happened to someone who got back and told the story, but like, it puts it in perspective. If
Mhm,
you don't get a chance to travel and you don't get a chance to meet other people and see that everyone's just a person. They're just trying to do their best and they're trying to make their lives as good as they can be. And they started in a different country, and so different things happen. um, you can tell that that's probably bullshit, but if you're just not able to travel and you just hear everyone from Mexico is either poor or a cartel that's going to kidnap you, like,
mhm.
I'm not going to I'm not going to want to go there. But if I go there and see that that's obviously not true and that's just a very small population, most of the people, especially the ones without anything, are the nicest, most friendliest, would give you
Mhm,
their last bean if they had to. They're just welcoming and loving, and just, yeah, it's just the sense of community, I think, in other countries is something that really dawned on me that we don't have. Like, the generations that live together, the people that have the least are the most willing to share it.
mhm.
Whereas you come to the United States, and I feel like the people that have the most, you don't really have access to, because they're living in gated communities or in very nice areas. And they don't go out now. You just get your food delivered, and you don't have to interact with anyone randomly. Like, everyone you're seeing is someone
Yeah,
you pre-designed to hang out with. I think I
that
think I think we miss out on a lot, right? I think there's a lot of missed opportunities for growth and for understanding and for putting things in perspective when you're not put in these situations that you didn't plan explicitly.
yeah, that man, that's very well said, and I think I started to realize that too the more I traveled in those first few years is like, not only does the US not really have its own culture because it's such a melting pot of every culture coming here, but it doesn't really have community, like, people are more worried about, like, themselves or maybe their immediate family surviving, and that's what it's that rat race thing where everybody's just like, there's this end they think they're gonna get to, and until then, it's like, "Hey, I'll be nice to all you around me, but, like, I'm looking out for me first, so sorry." And then you go to these other countries, especially, like, towns in other countries, not huge metropolitan cities, and, there's just that community feeling where you can tell everybody interacts with all their neighbors still, which I feel like I I mean, I guess I'm guilty too, because back in the '90s growing up, I remember my parents knew all of our neighbors growing up on our street Pioneer. And now, like, I can't say in the last 5 places I've lived that I've known more than like one of my neighbors, and you might wave across the driveway, but like back then it was like you trusted your kids across the street or down
Yeah,
the block or even biking around the block by themselves. And I think that still exists in other places, whereas it hasn't really here in the States like since the 90s.
yeah, yeah. I have small kids. I have a 7 and 11-year-old. So, like, to see how they grow up versus how I grow up, it's just, you come home when the street lights on. That old story. That my kids have never had that opportunity. Like, they don't
Mhm.
go to the park by themselves. They don't play with their friends by themselves. Like, we either are with them or are watching them almost all the time, and
Yeah.
it's not good.
Do you
So
think that's so I remember reading recently that that is mostly due to the rampant amount of extra media in our faces. Like, even in the 90s and 80s and all that, you had news stations, but now you have everybody who has a phone and a camera sharing like their parts of life. And so it seems like there's more crime going on, more kidnapping, more whatever it is that we're afraid of if we're a parent, especially, right? But in reality, there's not more of it. It's always been that way. There might
yeah,
even be less of it, but because it's in your face,
yeah,
you're more aware of it. So now it's like, well, I don't want my little kid biking down the block to their buddies. I'll drop
right.
them off.
And, like, Yeah, I think you're right. I don't know if there's more or less or the same, but it's certainly like in our face. And it's a real thing. Like growing up, I think I knew someone who had been kidnapped and never showed up, but that was like the biggest event of my life when I was
Mhm.
younger. Nothing bad happened to any of my other friends. Like none of the stories of guys with panel vans and free candy and that kind of worst case scenario stuff that you seem to hear a lot of now. But now as a parent, like you realize it just takes one time and you've almost dashed a life, right? And I would feel
Yeah.
so terrible if I let my guard down and something happened, right? Even if the percentage is super duper low, I personally would feel so upset with myself.
Yeah.
So
And
it's like,
now this is more of an different topic than what we're on, but because of that, do you feel like that is what changes generation to generation? Because yeah, like I would get that too. I would feel terrible if it was like, man, of all the kids, it was mine, and I guess I'll never see him again. The right sketchy van pulled up to them and snatched him over. But at the same time, you got to be that kid biking around, right? And
yeah,
so it's like it's almost like you're doing it for the right reasons, but we then shelter kids from like I don't know, getting the
yeah.
same character traits that we got to get.
It certainly builds more resilient kids, and I think more resilient kids make more resilient adults. And I think when you're not resilient, you're soft because your parents have bulldozed all the obstacles in front of you. That's certainly not a good trend for society as a whole. I don't know how to get past that. I have the paintball field, and I go out and work during the week and after school and stuff. And I always take my kids with me, even if they don't want to. Where I'm like, I'm going to go out and work. You can help me, or you can not. You can run around and hunt for lizards and snakes and find birds and rats and whatever you want to do. And so they'll come and help me a little bit, and then explore, and then come back. And there's just no one out there, so I'm not worried about another person interacting with them in a negative way. So I'm trying to do it that way, but I want them to be resilient. But yeah, it's in my town. There have been parents that complain. They're like, "There's like an 8-year-old girl riding her bike to the park. Who is that? I'm calling CPS, and we're getting those parents thrown in jail." Like
Oh
this
my
active
god,
active parent vigilantism against another parent because they saw a kid unattended ride a bike.
that's
Um,
terrible.
So, it's you hear a couple of times of those, and you don't wanna be the jerk that loses your kid to CPS because you let him bike, right? That's crazy. It's a crazy
Yeah.
world. It's a crazy world, Joe.
It is. It is wild. It's something I think about more and more, especially, looming into young adulthood here. And if I ever want to have a kid, you're just like, man, perspective is wild, right? And it then changes more when you mix culture into it. But like even in that example, that person's doing what they think is right. It's not even like they're trying to be evil or just say, fuck this other person. I'm gonna make sure they lose their kids. They go, oh my God, that kid's in danger. Their parent's not fit for parenting. But
Right,
that's their perspective. And
right,
that parent might be like raising their kid with all these like these mindfulness practices of like be aware, look at your surroundings, like, you
right,
know, call to a different adult if you think you're in trouble, blah blah
right.
blah. And man, it's just it's getting crazier and crazier because the spectrum is very broad now.
Yeah, yeah.
Wild. Well, I guess I don't want to keep you forever here, but there were a few things I wanted to I guess get into the more the question side of stuff. Unless you have a another particular story you want to tell from a certain event.
Um, no, I mean, I have a lot of stories, but I feel like maybe I'll save those for another time.
That's true.
So do you
Yeah, you'll be welcome back on for sure. You've had some really good ones. So I guess, more just quick fun questions for me to know because me and you've chatted plenty, but not about this stuff. But I guess for starters, who was your favorite road dog traveling
um,
internationally?
Man, I've enjoyed everyone I've been with. Like I've had a good time with everyone. I've traveled with Yosh a bunch. I've traveled with Alex Ragy and Ryan Greenspan for a couple trips and SK, Skinny Kevin. Those guys we had a lot of good times together, and they're pretty much chill and easy to deal with, and like on the same wavelength. Especially
Yeah.
Yosh. Yosh is really go with the flow, and like
Yep.
Yosh is just an amazing person. Good at like calming fears and settling disputes and so those
100%.
those guys would be, and if I had to travel again and those would be the guys. And Matt's fun. Matt's a really fun guy to be on. Once you're on the trip, once you've gotten out onto the road and are like, doing the things, he's really awesome to have around too.
Yeah. Oh, that's good answers. I guess that would have been that's the way I'll ask it for now on is if you had to choose a person or a group to travel again with, who would it be? Because, we all probably have quite a few good traveling buddies, but I know it myself. There's some guys that when I travel with them, they're a little bit more OCD about their planning. Like they have to have a plan, or like they want the more luxury hotel rather than just like, hey, let's save that money, get the $10 hostel, do more experiences. So, like
Right.
Harrison Fry has always been my favorite travel buddy because of the go with the flow thing. Like we will figure it out without any plan. We'll have the most fun time ever. So it's cool that you found those guys, and yeah, they always make for the best stories.
Yeah, for sure.
Now, is there a particular thing that you always did when you traveled internationally? Like, for example, some people always have to try the local beer. I know I'm one of those people. Or if I go to this area, I'm gonna, see the more historic sites or the museums or art.
So every time we went to a tournament, I took a bill from that country because back then at first it wasn't euros, it was like the franc or the English pound or whatever the currency was. I took a bill, usually the lowest, cheapest bill I could get because I didn't have a lot of money. I got everyone on my team to sign the bill, and I would write at the top like the tournament name, the team that I played on, and the place that we got in the tournament. And then I would
Yeah.
try and take a team picture, and I think I got most of them. And then I had like a book where I'd put the bill and the team picture, and then like if I went to like the Louvre, I put like the museum stub ticket in there to remember that. So I always and I did that in the US too. Like anytime we made the finals, I would take a $1 bill, put the team name, try and get everyone on the team to sign it. I tried to get a team picture, and so I had like something to remember. So when I'm old and I can't remember anything, I can look at this and be like, "Oh, that was cool art. I kind of remember that."
Dude, that is such a great idea. Do you still have all that?
I still have all that. Yeah,
Man, I'd love to see a picture of that, just like the different
yeah.
bills, because that's kind of like man, what's the movie? Saving Private Ryan. He collects a little bit of dirt from each battle he's been in,
Yeah,
and
yeah,
you
yeah,
are collecting in a way, the dirt from each of
yeah,
your adventures. So that is super cool. I kind of do the same. Like I always get the currency from each country I visit, and I never thought to organize it or sign it like that, but I just have this big baggie of divided up currencies marked with, rubber band and a piece of paper of Indonesia, this, that, that. So that is super cool. It's a fun thing to collect. And
yeah.
are you a souvenir guy? Like, do you ever get whatever it is, like the clothing of that area, or even just like souvenirs to bring back as gifts for your family?
I always no, I because I was trying to save money and I didn't always have a lot of it, so the
Uh,
dollar was always the souvenir more or less. I always took a list of like 15 people, and I would make an effort every single city to get a postcard from that city and sit down and spend an hour or whatever writing everyone in my life a postcard from
mm,
that city, just not to like rub it in their face, just be like, listen, you're in my life and I really appreciate you and I'm here enjoying this place. This is what it looks like, and I want to thank you for the part that you played in my life. My really good friends and teammates, and my parents and my girlfriend or whoever at the time would just like was supportive of me traveling. Because if you say, "Hey, I'm going to go to England and play a tournament, and then I'm going to go to Ireland and Scotland," you can have some negativity. And certainly, I had some friends that were just like, "Whatever, you're so cool, right?"
yeah,
So I
yeah.
quickly parsed those people out of my life. And the ones that stayed were like, that's awesome. And they wanted to hear about it. And I felt like,
Mhm.
they were a part of it or they supported it and like it was fun to share. And so I always tried to thank those people as best I could. A postcard maybe what was what I could do at the time.
That's very cool of you. I could already tell that you're a good friend, but that's very cool of you because while you're there and like, soaking up the moment and trying to be present in this new place and experience, they're still on your mind enough to let them know, like, hey, this is where I am. It's beautiful. It's fucking sweet. I wish you were here. And
Yeah.
that's almost like a lost art form. Like people don't really send postcards anywhere
Yeah, yeah,
anymore.
it feels like it. So when I get a postcard now from someone that's traveled, and sometimes people will buy the postcard, go home, write it, send it to you, right? That's not as good, but still they've made the effort, and certainly after the fact, it still counts for something. I
Yeah.
always like, oh, that is so cool. Like they went to wherever, got me this postcard. wrote me a letter just to me, wanted to talk to
Yeah.
me about it. That is awesome. So I'm always like very thankful for those. I have a friend that through paintball, he backpacks a lot and goes on like these crazy adventures. And like he always just like he writes me a Christmas card, he writes me a birthday card. He's just like always thinking of me, even though he's got no real reason to. And he just
Yeah.
played at my field, a customer of mine that
Wow.
we played tournament. And he's just always it's just that level of attention to a person's relationship, I think, is valuable. And
Mhm.
it's and like you said, it's definitely not it's a lost art.
Yeah. Man, that's cool. I'll have to get your address after this because I know I'm doing a little bit of traveling this year. I'll be going to
Yeah, yeah.
Panama and Colombia soon, so I'll send you a cool custom postcard
I would love that.
directly from their post office. That'll be sweet.
I would love that.
Awesome. Is there anything that you always bring with you when you travel?
Uh,
Not passport, phone, charger, stuff like that, but like
yeah,
something
yeah.
that you're like, this is always useful to have, and this would be like a good tip for other people who,
Well, I
might need.
always tried to get coins, like I said. Like when I'd land in the country, the first thing I would do is get coins with as much money as I thought I could spare to give to like the guys that were homeless or the beggars in the street, more or less. I always did that. Back when I was traveling, you didn't have music on your phone as much, and so I always had an MP3 player because I'd been on a lot of I like stressful train trips where I didn't necessarily know anybody. I traveled by myself a fair amount, and it's not as fun as traveling with other people. And I
Mhm.
felt like familiar music calmed me down and put me in like sort of a happier space to sort of deal with the stress of the situation. So I always tried to have like the 12 songs that would fit on my giant MP3 player. Whereas now I think you can have 18,000 songs at your cell phone
Yeah,
and listen to whatever song you want in whatever order you want. And that wasn't the case, but that was something that I always found very helpful was to have music.
that's cool. That shows the bit of datedness of what we're talking about when
Right.
you were,
Yeah.
like, traveling a lot, but I remember those days of having this big Zune or something before the iPod and
Right.
listening to the same fucking 12 songs on
Yeah.
repeat
Yeah.
for forever.
Yeah.
So that is funny. Winding down to the last few questions here, I guess, you told me you weren't really culture shocked much, but, we talked a lot about perspective, and did you feel like from what you were learning about places or even just the people or like the language they speak back home through books or Discovery Channel, whatever, and then going there, did your perspective change on some of the places you went or like the people that you were meeting from there?
I think a lot of the places we went to were so Paris is Paris, and you see the giant monuments, and like you don't really get much other than a tourist experience in the summertime in Paris, right?
Yeah.
But some like the smaller countries or the smaller cities that you'd go out to dine in or just like walk around, and there's no like studying up on what people in Luxembourg are like, right? Like,
Yeah.
didn't know where it was. Um, but I think it just sort of illustrates to me that people are people and everyone's just kind of like doing the best they can where they are. And we were lucky enough to be born here now, the most comfortable country and the most comfortable time in human civilization. And we were lucky enough. Out of all the people in the world born, we definitely won the lottery, right? And I think all those people in our
Mhm.
situation would much rather prefer to be in a comfortable situation, but they're doing the best they can where they can. And that made an impression upon me. So it's not
Mhm.
easy to. I didn't often take the criticism or the implications that other countries were villains or bad guys or
That's good.
with the rhetoric that's out there to fearmonger. I always saw that people were people
Yeah.
doing the best they can, and if you only got one choice to do something for your family or for yourself, then that's the choice is already made for you, right? So it's
Mhm.
not really your fault.
That's very cool. I like the open mindedness just because I guess it depends where you're raised or your upbringing. But, here in the United States, in certain whole states, even, or just like small towns, it's not your fault or theirs, but you're just raised with this conditioning of like, this place, people are like that. This place, people are like that.
Yeah,
And it's hard to tune out that inner voice and just go, no, 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 they're just people. Let me go experience it myself and I'll decide like
right.
how similar or different people are.
And it cuts this way too, right? I mean, you can have one political affiliation now and think that the other side, especially in these time, is the bad guy and the devil and the worst that you can think of. But if you look at it through that lens, then they're just like the people in the poor countryside of Portugal. They're doing the best they can with what they have with
Mhm.
their environment. We're all a product of our environment.
True, true. And that makes one very cool thing that you can do while you travel by being like a really respectful, open, mindful person is like it's the same over there. There are people that are going to have a certain perception of us and go,
Right.
"Uh-oh, I can see him coming already. Here comes that loudmouth American. This guy's about to be an asshole or treat us just like we're the waiter and not a human." Right?
We
And then when you actually connect with them the right way, like I've even had people, that it's not like they say like, "Oh, I thought you were going to be a dick," but they're just like, "Oh, you're very cool,"
Yeah,
like,
yeah, yeah.
and you're
They
like,
say it
"Yeah,"
without saying.
and you,
We bear the responsibility of being ambassadors of paintball, number one, but
Mhm.
Americans number two, and just as much propaganda as we're getting about them, I would imagine they're getting something spinning negatively against us, right? So it's really our
Yeah.
responsibility to be extra good, so not to give them anything to be like, well, that guy, he was terrible to me or whatever, right?
Yep. Leave them with a better idea of Americans than when they first before they met you.
Right. Yeah, I see that as an absolute must and anywhere to travel. Even now, like I try extra hard to be as nice as possible. I'm always telling my kids to be like, say thank you, say please, like don't take anything for granted. Don't be that ugly American asking for ranch and yelling at the waiter.
Mhm. Yep. Take their suggestion and have their local dish rather than, "Do you have a burger here?"
Yeah, yeah,
And,
yeah.
if the conversation comes, maybe even let them know, like, "Don't worry, most of us are not like that thing you're thinking." Like, we're very chill, and I hope you're, more accepting of the future ones coming here. So,
Yeah.
the last thing I was gonna ask you was, I'm sure you learned plenty while you were traveling, and you're out there in a new external world and you're getting all this new data and that's awesome, right? But I've always found that in every single trip I've traveled, I then learned more about myself. Like, just like at the end of the trip, the flight home, I would reflect and be like, yeah, what was it I was actually drawn to do there? With all the different forms of entertainment or like stimulus, what was it that I went and did when it was on me and I was responsible for entertaining myself? And you learn something out of that. So did you find that any or all of these trips taught you valuable lessons about yourself?
Um, no, I don't know. I don't think so. That doesn't seem very progressive of me to say. I always was super fascinated by history, and I always had a really good sense of the places I wanted to see. So I wanted to see like the really big monuments. I wanted to see the museums. I really love museums, and I really thought museums are important. We were in Spain for a tournament. I think the same one I lost my passport with excessive, and we got there a day early, and we're going around Madrid, and the Prado is there. It's a super famous like museum there, one of the biggest in the world, and I knew where it was, and so I got the guys to take the taxi cab there, and I was like, all right, we're just gonna go over here, and I got them lined up before they knew what we were going into. Like, this is gonna be cool. You guys are gonna like this. And then like halfway through, they realized this is like a big museum, and they're met with moans and groans. And I got everyone into the museum, into the Prado, and some of the coolest artwork is in there. A lot of Spanish artwork, obviously. And then the whole time they're complaining, and then afterwards I heard them like, "Oh yeah," and then we went to Spain and we went to the Prado and we saw this like super cool Gauguin, and like that was really cool. To answer your question though, yeah, I just tried to be as nice as possible. That was always on my thoughts. Be as nice as possible and just experience as much as I could. Like just try and be a sponge
Hmm.
as possible for the culture or for the people or whatever I whatever situations I found myself in.
That's cool. Yeah, that's the way to do it. And I did like what you touched on in the beginning that uh that first time you lost your passport, afterwards you kind of learned you learned something about yourself here that you're like, I can get through it. Like I can handle it. I can
Yeah.
take care of myself. There's no reason to freak out or add extra stress or anything like that. And maybe that also coincided with like that 18, 19 coming of age period of your life when we all start to realize like, oh, I'm an adult, I got to handle me, like no one else is responsible for me. But it seemed like that particular travel event was your like I guess, fast tracking to that lesson
Yeah.
about like who you are and like that you are easily able to take care of yourself.
Right. Yeah. And really set upon me the importance of being nice. I, Fortunately, never went on a trip where afterwards I was like, man, that was bad of me. Or I could have been a lot nicer in that situation. Or I didn't mean to be dismissive, but I was always just like, who's really good at that too is Alex Lundquist, the
Oh yeah.
Swedish. He's a model.
Yeah.
He's like one of the most pretty people I've ever known in person,
Yeah.
and by far the nicest person in person. Like he would just go out of his way to be thoughtful and listen to people and just be kind and just an amazing person. Just he was a good example. I think like the first trip we went to Portugal, we were hanging out with he was on Ground Zero, I was on Joy Division, and we went to a Chinese restaurant, and it was like a dirty little hole of a Chinese restaurant in the middle of Portugal, nowhere. And this waiter had this hair coming out of his chin, like 6 inches, and he was hard to look at. He was a little abrasive, like probably had some bad teeth going on too. And Alex just stopped and took the time and like looked at him and like saw him and like was super respectful. And the rest of us were just like giggling and like trying not to look at him. And Alex just was like, for no good, he didn't have to, right? He could have just ordered his food and it
Yeah.
would have. But like he made this guy feel seen. That
Mhm.
probably reverberated through my travels too. Just Alex could take the time to be that nice, like I could too.
Yeah. Oh, clearly it stuck with you because you remembered that exact little detail, even just like the long hair on him. And
Yeah,
uh, how cool of a lesson to take from someone like that, where I've only got to briefly meet him. I'm sure you've seen that all the time from him, but um, people are even cooler when they're like that because there's a lot of like handsome or pretty people out there that they just ride on that. You know what I mean? They're like, I don't have to be. There's this like entitledness to them, but when you get someone like that, that's that, and also like a very pure heart and will be present with everyone they meet. Now it's like that person comes off as like a god because they're so different than everyone.
right. Yeah,
It's
yeah. Oh,
crazy.
super cool.
Well, yeah, thanks for sharing that one. I fully forgot about this, but this is a quick one. But you ever crash a moped?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think Thomas talked about it. We went to World Cup. We stayed a week before. We played Damage and Aftershock at some field in like Tampa Bay.
Hmm.
Maybe you're on the team. And then it was like a hurricane, so we didn't play the whole week. So we went down to St. Augustine on the way to Orlando, and it's like a big kind of touristy town, and there's scooters. So we got like a scooter gang, and we just mopeded around town. And then Nikki and I were like jumping off stuff and like trying to show each other up. And Nikki crashed and way before me, and it was like kind of bad. Then me and Carl's real athletic and real like I think he'd rode motorcycles at one point. We're like jumping off stuff, and I'm trying to like do better than him. And I jumped and then hit the ground and hit sand and just slid, and I scraped up my whole hand and my face. It's actually why
Oh
I
my
started the beard because I
god.
couldn't trim my face. So Nikki shaved a beard on me, and I liked it. I kept it. But we got to the tournament, my hand was like pussing and like there's no skin on it. They taped my gun to my hand because I was on the starting five, taped my gun to my hand in my right hand, and I just only ran to the corner and shot right-handed for the whole game. It hurt so bad. Like so I'd be in the room or the house with both my hands bundled up, and I'd be like, "Can you get me like a drink?" And they'd be like, "Why can't you get it yourself?" And I'm like, "Kitten pause." They're like, "Ah, oh, all right, here you go. Here's your drink."
Oh my god, dude. Yes.
Yeah, I hit real hard, real hard, real hard.
Sounds like it. Man, I love when I get those ones. And happy you're alive and not missing a hand or half your face from it.
Yeah,
So
yeah, right.
that's sweet. Well, Micah, you are a legend and my favorite field owner and a good buddy. And I appreciate you coming on here, dude.
Thanks, buddy. Thanks for having me on. I appreciate it. It was an honor to spend the moment with you.
Oh, thanks, man. I look forward to hopefully seeing you soon, and I'll have to have you on here again.
Sounds good. Take care of yourself.
All right, take it easy.